Hey, yo, salute to the people. It's the social forecast. Today is Monday, August 5th. It's about 2 a.m. in the morning. And I wanted to talk to y'all about a tweet someone posted on Twitter. They posed a question. The question was, how do you actually know when someone is toxic? And at first, the question seemed pretty straightforward. I mean, usually people hear the word toxic as far as people and relationships are concerned, and they automatically think, some form of abuse in the relationship, or maybe the person's on drugs and they're bringing that person down financially or what have you. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, like so many things when dealing with relationships and the interactions of two or more people in any kind of a relationship or friendship situation, toxic is just as subjective as anything else. And I realized, and there's no short answer to the question, you could have two individuals in a situation, a relationship, and the dealings that those two people have with one another, to those two individuals, can be their norm. To those two individuals, that situation can be perfectly fine. It can be tolerable. It can be a place of contentment for both of those people. And then I realized that one person's tolerance can be another person's toxicity. Toxic is not just a set in stone, this is what it is, and anytime this person or these individuals exhibits X behavior, they're automatically toxic. That's not true. For someone who might not tolerate a person who is in a relationship and maybe they're not an alcoholic, but they like to go out every other weekend and drink. And to that person, they may feel like, okay, I'm not a big drinker, so you go out with your friends every other weekend, have fun, you work hard, have a few drinks. And that relationship may end at some point down the line, and that individual may end up with someone else and exhibit the same behavior. And that person may perceive that behavior as toxic. They may feel like that person is a borderline alcoholic. They may feel like that person is not exhibiting behaviors conducive to that relationship. And so to that person, they may be toxic. Outside of the extremes, a form of abuse, or something where, let's say you two live together and a person is a heavy gambler to the point where they're gambling you out of a roof over your head or the bills being paid. Outside of those extremes, it's very hard to label a person toxic because, again, subjective. What one person may accept as perfectly fine or at least tolerable because they have at least their needs met in other areas of that situation, somebody else may label as toxic or as a deal breaker in that relationship. So it really is about, if you're trying to figure out if a person is toxic as it pertains to you and what your requirements and what your bottom line is for what you will not go lower than in your dealings with that person in a relationship, it's all about what you want for you. Whatever those things on your list consist of in the way of deal breakers, it's that conversation that you have with that person and the perception that you have of that person's actions. And if you feel it's toxic behavior, then it must be to you because you perceive it that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that person's toxic, just might not be the best person for you. So a lot of times when we talk to each other on social media, which is good to do, we should have conversation, we should have dialogue to figure out what we all are looking for, what we all want. And sometimes you need a bottom line. Sometimes you need an outside perspective to kind of figure out where you are. Sometimes we overreact, sometimes we exaggerate, sometimes we look at a situation from the inside looking outward, and it's hard to see the sleeves through the forest. And sometimes another person's perspective from the outside looking in can provide clarity. And sometimes that perspective can further muddy the waters. So I would say there's really no baseline for toxic outside of those extremes. It's all about what you're willing to tolerate. Everybody has a point at which they feel, all right, that's it. This is no longer a viable environment for us to coexist in. And then in those situations, you could label that individual for the purposes of your connection or your relationship with them as toxic. And it really can be that simple. So have more conversations with the people that you deal with. Have more communication that is clear for the both of you. Listen intently. Listen to hear and understand, not just to respond. And play off of each other the best way you know how. And take it from there. It's the best advice I can offer. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm my biggest fan. Be yours. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.